Hello, everybody. This is Julia Kline. Welcome back to another edition of the Sales Wound Deep Dive. And this morning, my guest is Jennifer Morgan. Jen, say hi to everybody.
Hi.
And why don't you take just a minute to share with everybody what it is that you do for a living?
I am an energy healer. I work with therapeutic gemstones as one of the tools that I use, and also acupuncture.
All right.
I do mostly phone sessions with the gemstone work, and that's what I'm wanting to develop more of and a bigger clientele in as part of my sales process in this conversations that we're having with the sales wounds.
All right, very good. So again, full transparency for everybody. Jen is a friend of mine. So I know her rather well, and she knows me. And she is also she's enrolled in a training program right now, the Heal Your Sales Wounds training program. So Jen is familiar with the sales wounds work as I am familiar with her sales wounds just a little bit. We've talked about this already. So it's not a completely cold conversation, but the intention, as always, in the next 30 minutes or so is to identify Jen's primary sales wound and to then begin to heal it and clear it for her benefit so that she is able to be more successful in the efforts that she puts forth, making sales and doing her sales and marketing work going forward. So Jen, let's start with, what do you perceive as your primary sales wound at this point?
So I wrote down three things, and I kind of see them being either a combination or so part of it is definitely feels like it comes through the anti-selling wound. And then I feel like that there's either a mix between or kind of a combination with that and the love and money wound. I think that somehow those are intertwined in the way things are showing up for me. The three things that I wrote down are that one of the things I struggle with is I really come from a place that my customers don't need what I'm doing. And what I mean by that is that I hold a space of wholeness. So there's nothing that anybody ever needs. And I don't know how to overcome that space in the conversation. So I feel like that fits very much into the anti-selling wound, just changing some of the words and the ideas behind it, in that, it's kind of my philosophy is that you can dig a ditch with your hands, but obviously some tools make that a lot easier. So what I do makes that an easier process, but it's like speaking to a need without speaking to a need in a way. And I haven't quite figured out where to take the conversation in that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So what I hear you saying is that your customers don't need what it is that you have to sell, because in part you are holding them in a space of wholeness, that you don't need any of this stuff. You're fine just the way you are. And I'm wondering if it changes things at all for you if you take out the word need and instead say that they have a problem that you are helping them solve. Because even though they are whole and perfect, there might in fact be things that are showing up in their experience that they would prefer not to have there.
Yes.
And that is what you're helping. So that's their problem. Their
Yes.
problem is that they are having experiences that they would prefer not to be having.
Yes.
And so does that help a little, at least as far as that goes?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And that's like, for me, it's like, okay, deepening the conversation around, for myself, around how to explain that or how to find that. Because in coming up with like what my customers' problems are, that first level, that came very easily. And it was interesting because the big emotion behind a lot of it was defeated. Which was a little surprising to me, how much that's what I want to call in, because I'm looking for people who are looking for a transformation. They're looking for a shift. And so like a lot of times people don't look for that until they get to that place of kind of feeling defeated. Like they've tried the little simple things that are just going to, cause that shift. And now they're looking for something bigger. They're looking for something that's going to take that deeper because they haven't gotten to the depths in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and that's often the case, right? With especially with spirituality, but with any kind of problem solving work, we go through, first we like suffer with it and we think it's not such a big problem, we can just deal with it. And then we try doing the things that we can do on our own that are simple and easy. And then once those things don't work and we realize, wow, this is a really big problem, then that's when we turn to somebody that we want to hire. And yeah, and that is, frankly, that's part of the process that is very helpful for you to understand about your customer. So it's good that you know that. That this is not their first tango with this problem. It's not like they woke up this morning and said, oh, look, I have a pimple. I need to do something about that, there's an embedded, ongoing, layered in nature to the problems that they're suffering with, to the things that they've got going on that they don't want to have.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
So I think that we want to dive into the love and money wound. That sounds kind of juicy. Are you open for that?
Yes.
My headset's falling out a little here. Great. And full disclosure, it's entirely possible that we're going to, in this discussion of the love and money wound, find ourselves wandering into territory that feels very raw and very vulnerable and very tender. And so right now, this video is not public. So I'll broadcast it later. But just in case anything does start to come up that you're not comfortable with, we can always take a turn prior to it being publicized. So, and maybe do some editing or whatever. So.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
All right. So what is it that makes you think that you've got a love and money wound?
So one of the things that was very clear to me, and I've done some work on it, but I'm sure that there are still parts and pieces and threads I haven't gotten to, is that is the biggest way that my parents showed love. Was they both grew up very poor. They both grew up where money was a huge issue, and they gave my brother and I a different circumstance in that, but their whole lives were about working and earning money, and really we just wanted their attention. And they kind of missed the point in that. And it's very much that hardworking, blue-collar mentality. The fact that I'm being an entrepreneur is so completely out of the box with my family, and it's not anywhere near where you show your love in that way of putting yourself first in your life. It is very much a family of martyrdom. You martyr yourself for your family. You martyr yourself for your children. And it's become very clear to me that like some of the choices I've made, especially the last 2 years, with putting myself first in my life so that I can be in a place to give from overflow, is so contrary to anything I've experienced before that I'm still like running into walls around that. And it really, like, when it comes to this, I come back to and I go, when it comes to love and being in a place to give from overflow, that really just falls straight into the love and money type of thing of like, how do I allow myself to be filled up before I'm giving? How do I allow myself to be in a place of putting myself first at that level? Because I want desperately to give from overflow. I want to be in the place where it feels like that wellspring, where I feel that geyser. And so to really be in a place to hold that and know that for myself, one, it's completely unknown territory. And two, it's so contrary to what I've been taught or experienced that I still like feel myself like walking around blind, bumping into walls, and going, okay, now which way do I turn? Like, I feel like I've turned all the different directions, and now which way do I turn? Is really kind of, where I feel that. So I feel very lost sometimes in like, how do I do this in this way that I intellectually know, and yet don't necessarily have a solid experience in and a solid pathway through?
There's a lot going on with what you've just said. There's an element that you are betraying your family and your family pattern because you're going off on an entrepreneurial path. There's also a part of you that is undoubtedly still the little kid that is craving love and attention, and all you ever got was money. And so there's a part of you that's like, I don't want your money, I want love. And that is undoubtedly happening on some level within your business. I don't want the money because if I get money, that means I've got no chance of getting love. So action, as I say that, I think that might be running, that you're afraid that the reason that you're receiving love and attention in your life is because you need it, because you're financially needy and dependent. And if you were to become financially independent, then the love would stop. I think that that's probably running as a fear. And also, you've got this thing going on where you said you want to be a geyser of abundance. And that is a deep family betrayal, because that is not how we do it in our family, little girl. We give out of desperation. We give our first penny, not our last. We give when we don't have anything to give. We suffer out of our, we give to the extent that it makes us suffer. And who do you think you are to feel abundant and plentiful, and then you're going to give? No, that's not how we do it, little girl. So out of all those things that I just threw out there, which one of them kind of hits you as the one that we want to talk about first?
I think the one that I wrote down money versus love, not both. Like I kind of have, like, I really, like, as you were saying that really spoke to me, that I have it as an either or,
Yep.
that they're in contrary to each other. I can't have both. It's one or the other. So I feel like that, starting there, I think that the other pieces are definitely there, and I think those are a little deeper. And I'm just going to be really clear that there's parts of that I'm ready to work on, and I'm sure that there are parts of that are going to be in process for a while.
Which part?
With the whole, like, kind of, how dare you,
family betrayal?
how dare you do this in a different way? I really, like, strongly feel like, yeah, that the betrayal on a certain level, I feel like, yeah, I'm willing to take that on. And then there's another piece that it's like, I kind of hear that, like an elder, it's not specifically my grandmother, but like an elderly grandmotherly figure, going, how dare you think that you can do this when, like, it's just this, how dare you kind of, staring down, so to speak, is the other part of that. And I think that there's a piece of that I'm ready to take on, and there's a piece of that that's going to take a longer process, if that makes sense.
It does, and it sounds to me like the place that we should start, if you're willing, rather than starting with the money versus love.
Okay, let's start there then.
Okay.
Let's go for it.
Okay, so I want you to really allow yourself to feel this shaming scorn being heaped upon you of, how dare you? How dare you? Who do you think you are that you can do it differently when all of us had to suffer? And whose voice do you hear that being most loudly?
It is my grandmother. It's my mom's mom.
Okay.
And she definitely was the queen of the martyrs. She carried that cross loud and proud.
Okay. We need to work with your grandmother when she was a little girl. What the grandmother who you knew didn't want you to know, but the spirit grandmother, who I assume she's gone at this point, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so because I feel her from over on the other side. She wants you to know how she was just like you. She was just like you. She didn't get love. I have chills all over. She didn't get love. And so she saw you not getting love. And as a human, she wasn't able to feel compassion, because by the time she had gotten to be your grandma, she was just so embittered, and she was so, there had been so much pain and suffering in her life that she was just like, well, you know what, this is the way it is. This is the way it is. And she saw it happening to you, And there was a little piece of her, just a little flash that felt like, oh, you poor little thing, you just need love. But that was such a dangerous feeling or thought for her that she just pushed it aside. And if anything, you trying to get it now is she's now she is so glad to see you doing it, because she's recognizing and she's saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you didn't get love. And she can't quite apologize for not being different, because it was just so out of the question that she could have given you love, or, just as a human, she was just so flawed. But as a little girl, like she was a happy, I see her skipping rope, wearing her little, 1910 little outfit or whatever. I don't know, I'm imagining that, like her little, turn of the century little outfit, and skipping rope and playing with kids on the street. And the boys are wearing their little caps and playing stickball. And, they were just out there having fun. But then as soon as she went into her house, man, oh man, it was dark and angry. And I the word evil actually came. I don't know what happened in her house when she was little, but it wasn't good. She wants you to know that you have her permission. How does that all sit with you? I sort of quieted down from her. So where are you at right now with all that?
As you were bringing her up, especially as a little girl, I saw how much she wanted love. And I felt myself just pick her up and hold her. And as you continued the conversation, and I've had a sense for a really long time that something devastated happened with her when she was around 8.
Yeah. The age
and
her, yeah.
And exactly what that was or wasn't has never come clear, but I've had that sense, and that and I could feel how, like in this conversation, while I was just kind of holding her there, I could feel how that spark of that anger and bitterness grew in a way that I'd never seen, like the process of it grow, which gave me a lot more empathy for her. And I really feel much clearer in the whole thing. Like I really just feel like resolved. Like whatever all of that's been about that I've been carrying feels really resolved right now.
Mm-hmm.
It feels really neutral. It doesn't feel like I'm carrying it. It just feels resolved and neutral.
It's funny, as you say that, I was just thinking to myself that whatever we were saying a minute ago, that shaming sentence, I can't even say it right now. Like that familial shame feels like it can't even be spoken.
Yeah, it just feels like it's neutralized to a point that it's just kind of dissipated.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so let's try on some statements.
Okay.
I want you to repeat after me. I need love.
I need love.
I need money.
I need money.
I receive both money and love.
I receive money and love.
I receive both money and love abundantly.
I receive both money and love abundantly.
The more, no. How do I say this? Go ahead.
Money and love in receiving and giving just continue to grow each other exponentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm looking for something like hmm, neither money nor love is conditional.
Neither money or love are conditional.
Right. Um, we're not, there's something else there. Okay, so let's talk, what's the next person? And there's something else that needs to be worked on, that needs to be talked about, needs to be cleared. So who is the next person that comes to mind for you where this issue of entangled money and love lives?
My dad.
Your father,
Yes.
okay? How
Yes.
does it live with your father?
And it's him slash his biological, like I feel like it's him, but I feel standing right behind him is his biological father. Is his, so it feels very strongly that patriarchal. Um and it's, so I feel a lot of that, I'm going to say wanderlust, like to like just go out and have adventure, to go out and have fun, to go out and create, and like being able to do and have money don't go together. Like you, like to have money you have to be steady, you have to have a job, you have to work hard, you have to da 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 da. And so it's like that, those, the wanting to give love and stability along with that sense of adventure, not being able to have both of those.
And what's coming up for me around your father is that the reason that a man needs money is because a man has to support his family. And so if a man didn't have a family, if a man gave in to his wanderlust and said, screw you to the family, well, then he doesn't need money. He doesn't need money. How does that sound for you?
Yeah, yeah, that was very much. That is why, my dad wasn't raised by his biological father. He was raised by a stepdad who very much had that stability and that steadiness, um, because his dad wasn't able to do that and stay centered with the family. Like he couldn't find a way to make both work. He couldn't find a way to have that adventure and that travel and be steady with the family to the point that, my grandmother left.
So did his biological father go off and have a bunch of adventures?
I don't know. He passed before I was born. But that, so I don't know exactly what the story was with that or wasn't.
Okay.
But I know that that was part of it, is that he, and I see that more so in my uncle than I saw in my dad. My uncle, I remember the story of my uncle just quit a perfectly good job to move to Colorado, and took his family and they moved to Colorado, and how that so much of the family judged that as just nonsensical. Like you just don't do things like that.
Did it work
And
out for
so
your uncle?
it did. It did. I mean, he had some, some ups and downs with it, but he more moved into that, like that adventure, and he still struggled with money in it, but he seemed to make it work that they'd be okay. I mean, they do great with it? No, but they were okay. But it also didn't
So
drive him.
and so your father did better financially than his brother did.
Yes.
And
Yes.
your father undoubtedly felt very proud of himself for that. He felt as though he had won the game. He did better at the game of life than his brother did, because his foolhardy, adventure-hearted brother went off and, yeah, fine, the family didn't starve to death, but he didn't win. He didn't do a good job. I put in my time. I put in my hours. I stayed at the factory or whatever the job was that he did,
Yes.
right?
Yes. At the betrayal of his own heart, at the
Yes.
betrayal of himself, in
Mhm.
order to do that. Like I really feel like, yes, on one level he could say I won because I did these things, but I also feel like strong heartbrokenness in that he betrayed who he really was. He betrayed being himself for his love of family,
Mhm.
for
And now
taking care of
is
his
he
family.
still alive or is he gone?
No, he passed.
He's gone too. Okay.
He didn't actually get a chance to retire. He
Wow.
worked until 2 weeks before he passed. And he'd always talked about wanting to fish and wanting to travel, and had these huge plans for when that would happen, and he wasn't able to have any of that. So it's a really strong sense that he betrayed his own heart for
Yeah.
the love of his family.
Right. Right, right, right. And he felt to a certain extent bitter and resentful the whole time. And so
Yes.
and he I what I'm getting is he actually had a hard time loving his family because frankly he very strongly resented all of you. And he thought, you know what, if you all weren't here, I could be off doing what I wanted to do. It's only because of you little rugrats that I have to, strap on the feed bag, so to speak, and go to the factory and make it happen.
Yes, and he felt very guilty for feeling that way. Like he felt that, but then he felt guilty for feeling that way.
Mm.
So yeah, it was that, but it was very deeply hidden bitterness. Because, I shouldn't feel that way. I feel guilty for feeling that way. This is my family. I shouldn't.
And did he
Um,
express that openly?
no, no, he did not express any of it. That's why I really strongly feel like he kept all of that so suppressed and so hidden because he was ashamed of feeling that way.
And so your sense that he was ashamed of feeling that way is from your own energetic work on this in the past?
Yes.
Where?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
there's some of it that's that, and it's also the way, although he had trouble expressing himself, he had trouble saying, there was no sense of him feeling bitter in any way. He really never appeared that way in any sense. He appeared confused. He appeared like he would try and say something and he couldn't get the words to come together in a way that would make sense or be clear. And I really feel like it's because he was just pushing so much down and suppressing so much that what bubbled out, what he was able to express, was so inauthentic and so confuddled that it often like didn't feel like it made sense. And I think he buried a lot of those feelings in drinking and in other addictive type behavior because he just really um he wanted to be so loving and he really tried, and it just kind of came off odd instead of clear. It came off as I often said I had to translate what he was saying or doing. I had to like figure it out and translate it because the way it came out was sideways instead of clear.
Um, so I suspect that this is the part that is not ready to let go yet because my experience during this conversation is that you have what's the word? How do I want to describe it? You've put a lot of words into, and you put like you're just pedaling as fast as your little legs can take you to come up with an explanation that makes sense.
Okay.
And it's like and what's sort of happening for me is it's sort of frothing the water and making it less clear. I felt as if I was getting a pretty clear message from your dad, which was rather different than the story that you have painted for yourself about your dad and his struggles. And as I went to share it, that is when the frothing started. And I'm going to interpret that as you not being ready to hear a different story about your dad and therefore not being quite ready to let go of this piece of it yet.
Okay. No, I can totally see that. And I actually kind of went back as you were saying that, going, this may have been my interpretation or what appeared later. And in the early stages of that choice of, do I stay here or do I go follow my own heart, I think was before I was cognizant. And I'm wondering how much of that I'm filtering through my mother kind of forced him into it. It's very, my mother forced him into staying. so
And
to
I
speak.
think that very much what's true is that you desperately wanted your daddy to love you. You
Yes.
desperately wanted your daddy to love you. And I think what it seems to me is that you have created a reality and a set of explanations about him and his behavior that you can live with. You can excuse him. You can say, well, he really did love me, but, or this is the way that maybe he couldn't express it, but he really did love me. And all that I'm going to suggest is to invite you, what do I want to say? What would happen if you started to believe that your father didn't love you the way that you have thought he did, and certainly the ways that you've wanted him to? And ponder that.
Okay.
And be willing to see what might change and what might not in your world if you become somebody whose daddy didn't love her. And I'm not saying that that's the case, but allow yourself to examine that possibility and see what happens.
Okay. Yeah. No, I can see a couple things showing up um in that possibility. One of the things I think that I often do, and it's kind of funny because it was one of the things I wrote on my list for this, is that I get myself spinning in options and possibilities versus in action. And I think that this is part of that, is that it's a way of being able to stay in a pretense, being able to
Yes.
stay in this is what I want my world to look like, therefore I'm going to
Yes.
be stuck in that spinning phase so that I can keep believing
Yes.
that.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's like you have dealt with the pain that you've suffered by coming up with a reality that works for you and an explanation of how, well, this is how it must be then. These are all the things that must have been true in order for the current reality to make sense and be tolerable. And yes, you put a lot of energy into maintaining that rather than, because, truth is scary. I spent 10 years resisting the undeniable truth that my brother didn't want me and his family. That was just so freaking painful. I couldn't face it. I spent 10 years being unwilling to accept the fact that my brother didn't want me to be part of his family. That's painful stuff.
Yeah.
When you don't, even if a part of you can, like, and I didn't like my brother, part of me didn't want him, but like those needs, those karmic and also emotional bonds that are created, they're just really, really, really hard to let go of.
Yeah.
And I think some of that's what's going on here, that you've got your father a little bit on a pedestal. You have kind of made some excuses for him in order to jive with the need that you have to feel loved by him.
Yes. Yes, which also, like, that fits perfectly in this whole concept of the love and money wound, because again, that is, that is where there's a part of me that's very clear that it was trading love for money. It was a trade. It wasn't a I could have one but not both. So he would go to work and have this job and be there so that we would have money, and that took all the love out of the game. That took all the love out of the conversation.
Yeah, and I suspect that your father did that to a greater degree than you have been willing to accept up until now. You've been like, it's like stunning to you. Like, wow, you really didn't love us, Dad. Wow. Like you really, wow. You had an obligation to us. But that wasn't the same as love. Like,
Yeah.
wow. Wow. You know, and then, you know, bringing into the, you know, again, back to the love and money wound and how it applies practically in your life today. If, you know, if you have this situation going on where there's a trade of love versus money, well, you know, again, I know you have done a fantastic job of securing love in your life. You've got amazing love in your life. And if there is some kind of a belief in your head that love and money are a trade, well, then it makes sense that you're having a hard time generating a lot of money.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, because I am unwilling to play where it's a trade.
Right.
I want, right now I am absolutely in love with the love, and if it's one or the other, I'm going to pick the love, you
Right.
know, and I want it to be both, and I'm clear that that's a possibility. I'm just not clear in creating that possibility.
Yeah, and I think that the further clearing work, I think, is around your father and accepting the truth of your father's mindset or your father's trade or, you know, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And because only by being willing to see the truth can you heal it.
I'm actually feeling a little bit of sadness for him in
Yes.
that it's becoming clear that, yeah, for him it was clearly a trade, that it was, you know, and that it was, again, such a deep betrayal of himself, that I'm just like, you know, how sad that that's all that he could see the world as, you know, of course I'm doing the same thing. I've carried that, you know, with me myself and into my own story. But I'm really going, you know, how sad that, you know, that he saw the I don't want to say need, I don't know if need's the right word, but he saw the obligation. He saw the only choice was to completely betray himself at that level. And no wonder there would be a lot of like seething anger and frustration around that. You know, like no wonder there would be.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, we're going to need to wrap up this deep dive, but there's more work for you to do with this for sure. And because right now you're in a very helpful and very useful intellectual reordering of what you have previously thought was true. And to release it, to get it out of your body, it is my belief that you will need to do some big, loud sobbing and allow yourself to feel the pain of the little girl and how much it hurts that little girl part of you to see your father through this new lens that you're perhaps starting to see him through. And what that means for that little girl, you know, and how sad that is for her, you know, because as much as the intellectual, you know, anyway, you get it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is powerful.
Good.
Powerful.
I'm glad you like it. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah.
I'll be very anxious to hear what happens for you for the next week or two as a result of all of this.
Okay. Awesome. Me too. I can't, I can't wait to see what happens too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, Jen.
Yes. All right. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too. And thanks everybody for joining me for yet another episode of the Sales Wound Deep Dive. And I will see you next time with whoever my next guest is. Have a great rest of your day.